The phone call did not merely interrupt Anita's night. It dismantled the fragile architecture of certainty she had spent years constructing. Darkness pressed in around her as the realization settled, heavy and suffocating. The man whose voice echoed through the line was not supposed to exist anymore. His death had been mourned, documented, and sealed beneath layers of official closure. And yet the familiarity of that voice cut through time with surgical precision, reopening wounds Anita had never allowed to heal. Shock quickly gave way to anger, hot, immediate, and deeply personal. It was not only the shock of resurrection that shook her, but the audacity of his return, as if death itself had been a temporary inconvenience rather than an irrevocable end. Anita's anger turned inward almost as quickly as it flared outward. If he was alive, then everything she had accepted as truth had been a carefully maintained lie. The funeral, the condolences, the years of quiet endurance had all been built on a foundation of deception. Worse still was the question she could not escape. Someone else had been buried in his place. A nameless body, a stolen identity, a life erased to protect a secret she had never been allowed to fully understand. The weight of that possibility crushed against her chest, igniting guilt she had long buried beneath survival. Whether she had known the full truth or not no longer mattered. Silence had made her complicit. Her husband's disappearance had never been clean. Even at the time, there were inconsistencies she had forced herself to overlook, missing details that did not add up, questions she chose not to ask because asking them would have required confronting a reality she was not prepared to face. Anita had told herself that grief required acceptance, not investigation. Now she saw that belief for what it truly was, self-preservation masquerading as strength. Anger rose again, sharper this time, fueled by the realization that she had been maneuvered into mourning when she should have been demanding answers. The timing of his return felt calculated, almost cruel. The Dupree family stood on the brink of collapse, weakened by internal fractures, scandals hovering just beneath the surface. Anita understood instinctively that his reappearance was not an act of love or remorse. It was strategy. He had chosen this moment because chaos created opportunity, and desperation lowered defenses. That understanding ignited a different kind of fury, a recognition that she was not being reunited with a lost husband, but targeted as a resource, a pawn in a larger game that had never truly ended. The man who had returned carried his own storm of unresolved conflict. Survival had demanded choices he could never fully justify, alliances forged in fear and ambition rather than loyalty. He had lived with the knowledge that his continued existence required another life to be erased, another name to be swallowed by the earth in his place. That knowledge hardened him over time, transforming guilt into entitlement. He told himself that survival was proof of worth, that anyone who had died instead of him had simply been weaker, less necessary. Still, beneath that rationalization, anger simmered. Anger at a world that had forced him to vanish. Anger at a family that had moved on without him. Anger at Anita for adapting to life in his absence. Anita's internal conflict deepened as memories resurfaced, recontextualized by this revelation. Moments she once interpreted as affection now felt like rehearsals for manipulation. Promises once spoken with conviction now sounded like contingency plans. She questioned whether she had ever truly known the man she married, or whether he had always been capable of sacrificing others to protect himself. That doubt eroded the last remnants of loyalty she might have felt, replacing them with a cold determination to reclaim agency she had surrendered years ago. The possibility that someone within the Dupree circle had helped facilitate the deception only intensified the tension. Anita sensed betrayal not as a single act, but as a network of quiet decisions made without her consent. Each unanswered question became an accusation. Each unexplained gap in the past grew sharper, more dangerous. Her anger expanded outward, no longer focused solely on her husband, but on a system that had normalized secrecy and rewarded those who manipulated from the shadows. Trust, once fractured, could not be selectively restored. As pressure mounted, Anita found herself torn between competing instincts. One urged confrontation, exposure, the tearing down of every lie, regardless of collateral damage. The other warned of consequences too vast to predict: legal fallout, public scandal, the irreversible destruction of a family already on the brink. Both paths demanded sacrifice. Choosing silence meant accepting that an innocent person had died in her husband's place, their memory reduced to a convenient footnote. Choosing truth meant unleashing forces that could destroy everything she had spent years protecting. Neither option offered peace. Her husband, sensing resistance rather than relief, reacted with his own form of aggression. Control had always been his weapon of choice, and losing it awakened a volatile mix of fear and resentment. He had not survived for this long only to be undone by hesitation. In his mind, Anita's anger was an obstacle to be managed, not a response to be respected. That miscalculation deepened the divide between them, transforming unresolved history into active hostility. Each step he took to secure his position only confirmed her worst suspicions. The family's instability amplified every conflict. Old rivalries resurfaced, alliances shifted, and secrets long buried threatened to surface under renewed scrutiny. Anita watched the structure she once believed in crumble, not from a single blow, but from accumulated rot. The realization that her husband's return might be the catalyst for total collapse filled her with equal parts dread and grim satisfaction. If destruction was inevitable, then perhaps it was better for it to come from the truth rather than another lie. Cornered by circumstance, Anita's anger evolved into resolve. She no longer viewed herself as a passive participant in a tragedy authored by others. She recognized that indecision itself was a choice, one that favored those who thrived on manipulation. The past could not be undone, but the future was still contested ground. Every secret exposed, every risk taken would reshape the battlefield, for better or worse. The question was no longer whether the truth would emerge, but who would control the narrative when it did. In the suffocating aftermath of that midnight call, one certainty emerged from the chaos. Resurrection was not redemption, it was an invasion. And as the walls closed in on everyone involved, the consequences of buried choices began to surface, demanding payment in anger, betrayal, and irreversible loss. The return of a man thought dead did not restore what had been lost. It simply ensured that when the reckoning came, it would spare no one.